The air in the dining room was thick with the aroma of cinnamon and nutmeg. A golden bread pudding sat at the center of the table, steam curling upward like a promise of comfort. I had spent the afternoon preparing it, mixing, baking just like I used to when my son was small and couldn't get enough of it. Back then, he would race through the kitchen, his curly hair bouncing, his laughter filling the house. "Mama, you make the best pudding in the world," he would say, sticky fingers reaching for another spoonful. I used to believe those words. I used to believe I was the best. But now, as I placed the dessert in front of my son Robert and his wife Valerie, I felt none of that warmth, only tension, only the gnawing feeling that whatever I did was never enough. Valerie leaned back in her chair, her long manicured nails tapping against her wineglass. She was tall and slender, her skin polished and glowing like she had just stepped off a beauty commercial. Her voice sliced through the room, cold and sharp. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." The words hit me harder than I expected. They echoed in my chest like a bell tolling for something long dead. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I, Shirley Johnson, 56 years old, a woman with curves that had thickened over the years, skin the color of warm coffee, hair pulled back into a neat bun streaked with gray stewed frozen beside the table. I looked at Valerie, then at my son. Robert shifted uncomfortably, his fork halfway to his mouth, his eyes wide like a child caught between two parents fighting. Silence stretched then. Before I could stop myself, I pushed back my chair and said, calm but deadly, "Then maybe your mother can start paying your rent." Robert went pale. His fork clattered to the plate. "Rent?" he blurted, his voice cracking. "What rent?" I swallowed hard. I hadn't meant to say it, not like that, not in front of her. But maybe some part of me had been waiting for this moment all along. The truth clawed its way out, uninvited. My son's face twisted in confusion, then horror. Valerie frowned, her eyes darting between us. "What is she talking about, Robert?" He opened his mouth, closed it again, then rubbed his forehead with trembling hands. "Mama," he whispered, "you promised." Promised? Yes, I had promised. 2 years earlier, Robert had come to my door late at night, his shoulders hunched, his face streaked with shame. He had just lost his job, bills were piling up, and he didn't know how to tell his wife. "Please, Mama," he begged, his voice breaking. "Don't tell Valerie. She'll lose respect for me. Just help us until I get back on my feet." How could I say no? He was my only child, the boy I raised on my own after his father passed, the boy I once worked double shifts for, sacrificing sleep, food, and even my health. So, I agreed. I picked up extra sewing jobs, hemming gowns, mending suits, embroidering tablecloths, until my fingers ached. I skipped medication for my arthritis just to save a few more dollars. Every month, I transferred $1,000 to cover the rent for their modern apartment, with its granite counters and sleek furniture. And every month, I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I was protecting my son's pride, that this was what love looked like. But love had turned into resentment. While I counted pennies, they lived as if nothing had changed. New clothes, dinners out, vacations I knew they couldn't afford. Valerie would walk into my house and wrinkle her nose at my old sofa, my faded curtains. "My mom's house is so much more modern," she once said. "She has those trendy minimalist pieces." I smiled through it. I always smiled. But tonight, something inside me snapped. Robert's voice trembled as he turned to Valerie. "Baby, I can explain." "No," I cut in. My voice was steady now, fueled by years of silence. "Let me explain." I looked Valerie dead in the eyes. "For 2 years, I've been paying your rent. While you insult me, while you compare me to your mother, I've been working myself sick just to keep you both under that roof. $1,000 a month. From my pocket, from my hands, from my sacrifice." Valerie's lips parted, her confidence faltering. For the first time that night, she looked unsure. Robert slumped in his chair, his hands covering his face. "Mama, why?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't you just tell me you couldn't keep doing it?" "Because you're my son," I snapped, my voice rising. "Because when you came to me crying that night, saying you had nothing, not even money for food, I couldn't let you fall. I sold your father's wedding ring last week, Robert, the only piece of him I had left. I sold it to keep you comfortable while you both treated me like I was nothing." The words broke something in me. Tears streamed down my cheeks, hot with rage, not sorrow. The room went silent again. I could hear the ticking of the old clock on the wall, the shallow breaths of my son, the faint clink of Valerie's spoon against her glass as her hand shook. Finally, Valerie spoke, her voice small, almost trembling. I didn't know. No, you didn't, I said, cutting her off. Because Robert didn't tell you, and because you never cared to ask. All you cared about was whether my house looked outdated, or whether my pudding wasn't as fancy as your mother's desserts. I turned to Robert. Do you know what hurts the most? Not the money, not even selling your father's ring. What hurts is, every time you came here, I saw the contempt in your eyes. I saw the way you let Valerie belittle me. I thought we were a family. I dreamed of grandkids running through this house, of laughter around this table. And instead, I got this. Robert looked up, his eyes wet, his lips trembling. Mama, I love you, I asked quietly, because love doesn't look like this. The pudding sat untouched in the middle of the table. Its sweet aroma now, bitter to me. Valerie shifted in her seat, her face flushed. You can't just throw this in our faces, she said, her voice rising, panic sharpening her tone. Families forgive, families support each other. I laughed bitterly. Support? Do you mean the way you've supported me tonight, Valerie, by comparing me to your mother, by treating me like a burden, or the way Robert supported me by lying about everything? Robert tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled it back. For once in my life, I wasn't going to soften. For once, I wasn't going to rescue him. I stood tall, shoulders squared. If your mother is such a better woman than me, then maybe she can take over. I've given all I can, and tonight, I'm done being invisible. The words hung in the air, final and unyielding. For the first time in years, I felt something stir inside me, not guilt, not shame, but power. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this night would change everything. The morning after Valerie's stinging remark, Shirley awoke with the heaviness of someone who had spent the night wrestling not with sleep, but with memories. The clock on her nightstand ticked insistently, each second reminding her that another day was about to demand her strength, her patience, her endurance. She sat up, her joints protesting, and looked around her small bedroom. The curtains were thin and faded, letting in streaks of sunlight that highlighted the peeling paint on the walls. This was her sanctuary, modest and imperfect, but hers. Yet lately, it felt less like a safe haven and more like a reminder of the compromises she had made. Shirley moved slowly to the kitchen, the scent of last night's coffee still lingering in the air. She brewed a fresh pot, the rhythmic gurgle of the machine filling the silence. As she poured herself a cup, she thought of Robert. Her son had been her world since the day he was born. She had sacrificed nights, health, and dreams for him. When his father left, Shirley became both mother and father, the provider and the nurturer. She had taken on extra shifts, skipped meals, and put her own needs aside, all so Robert could walk through the world without the shadows that had followed her. Yet here she was, decades later, still carrying him in ways he didn't even realize. The words Valerie had spat at her, "You're not even half the woman my mother is," still rang in her ears. Shirley had wanted to reply, to stand tall and assert her worth, but instead, she had swallowed the hurt and busied herself with dessert plates, her silence both shield and prison. Now, in the quiet of her kitchen, she replayed the scene over and over. Each time, she imagined herself answering differently. Each time, she pictured Robert stepping in to defend her. But reality was harsher. Robert had said nothing, his eyes darting away, his lips pressed tight. That silence cut deeper than Valerie's cruelty. Shirley sipped her coffee and reached for the envelope tucked beneath the bread box. It contained the receipt for last month's rent, though no one else knew it. Robert and Valerie thought Robert had negotiated with the landlord, secured an extension, made it all work. In truth, Shirley had stepped in quietly, wiring the payment herself, draining what little savings she had. She had told herself it was for Robert's pride, to help him feel like the provider he so desperately wanted to be. But deep down, she knew it was also about control, her need to keep her son afloat, even at her own expense. She set the envelope down and whispered, "How much longer can I do this?" The phone rang, startling her. She hesitated before answering. It was Robert. His voice was tight, rushed. "Mom, listen, I need a favor." Shirley's stomach clenched. Favors from Robert were never small. "What is it, baby?" "There's this Bilker insurance. I thought I had it covered, but something came up. Could you just this once help me out?" Shirley closed her eyes. "Robert, you said last time was the last time." "I know, Mom. I swear, I'm getting back on track. Just Valerie doesn't need to know. Okay, I'll pay you back." Her heart ached. The lie was too familiar. She wanted to say no, to finally draw a line. But then she pictured Robert's face as a boy, the way he used to run to her with scraped knees, how he had once believed she could fix anything. Against her better judgment, she found herself agreeing. All right, I'll see what I can do. When she hung up, she sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling. She hated herself for caving, hated the cycle they were both trapped in. But even as tears pricked her eyes, there was a spark of resolve she hadn't felt in years. Something had to change. She couldn't keep sacrificing pieces of herself to fill Robert's endless void. If she didn't stop now, there would be nothing left of her to salvage that evening. Shirley found herself in front of the mirror. She studied her reflection, her round face, the soft fullness of her body, the streaks of gray in her tightly curled hair. She saw the years etched into her skin, the resilience in her posture. She was not the glamorous woman Valerie's mother might be, but she was real. She was flesh and blood, with a history of battles fought and survived. And yet, for too long, she had allowed others to define her worth. She whispered to her reflection, "You are enough." It felt strange, almost foreign, to say the words aloud, but as she repeated them, a warmth spread through her chest. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to start believing them. 2 days later, Shirley joined her church group for their weekly gathering. The women there, mostly older like herself, were her lifeline. They laughed, prayed, and shared stories of their families. As they passed around plates of cornbread and collard greens, Shirley confided in her closest friend, Marlene. "That girl Valerie," she said, "I wasn't even half the woman her mother is." Shirley's voice wavered. Marlene's eyes flashed with anger. "Child, you listen to me. You've raised a son on your own, worked yourself to the bone, and still found a way to smile through it all. Don't you let nobody tell you you're less than. That girl don't know a thing about what makes a real woman." Shirley smiled weakly. "I just wish Robert had stood up for me." Marlene reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Men can be blind, especially to the hands that built them. But one day, he'll see, and you need to stop hiding your light. Start living for you." The words settled deep in Shirley's heart. Maybe it was time to take her friend's advice. Maybe it was time to stop being only Robert's mother and start being Shirley again. That night, as Shirley lay in bed, she thought about the life she had put on hold, the books she had wanted to write, the places she had dreamed of visiting. Seattle, for one, the city where an old friend, Michael Jenkins, had once invited her to come see the ocean. She had declined back then, too busy holding Robert's world together. But the thought lingered now, a quiet call to reclaim something she had lost. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it carried with it a vision. Shirley standing on a shoreline, waves crashing at her feet, her arms open wide. She was not defined by anyone's judgment, not diminished by anyone's silence. She was free, for the first time in years. She woke with hope. Shirley carried herself through the week with a strange mix of dread and determination. She had promised Robert she would help with his car insurance, but something inside her rebelled against the idea. Every time she reached for her checkbook, her chest tightened. Each dollar she gave away seemed to take another piece of her soul with it. On Thursday afternoon, she sat on the porch, the late summer sun warming her skin, when her landlord, Mr. Alvarez, strolled by. He was a kind man in his 70s, always quick with a smile. But that day, his smile faded when he saw her. "Shirley," he said, hesitating, "I didn't want to bother you, but we need to talk." Her stomach dropped. She motioned for him to sit, though her legs already trembled. "I've been trying to reach Robert," Mr. Alvarez began, "about the rent. I didn't want to embarrass him, but I know it was you who sent the payment last month." Shirley's mouth went dry. "He doesn't know," she said quickly, almost pleading by Mr. Alvarez's side. "I understand, you're trying to protect him, but you can't keep doing this. He's a grown man, and you've done enough." The words hit her harder than Valerie's insult. They came not from cruelty, but compassion. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want him to feel like a failure." "Maybe he needs to feel that," Mr. Alvarez said gently. "Otherwise he'll never stand on his own." Shirley nodded, though her heart clenched. She watched as Mr. Alvarez walked away, his figure fading down the street, and she realized something she'd avoided for too long. By rescuing Robert again and again, she had been his crutch and his cage. That evening, Robert came over. His face was drawn, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes darting like a boy caught in a lie. Valerie followed behind him, immaculate as always, her perfume entering the room before she did. "Hey, Mom," Robert said, forcing cheer into his voice. "You got a minute?" Shirley motioned them inside, her nerves coiling like snakes. Robert sat at the table, drumming his fingers. "Look, I just need a little more time. Things are rough at work. I'll cover rent next month, I promise. And the insurance. I'll get you the money back soon. Shirley looked at him. Really looked. This was her son, the boy, who once brought her dandelions from the yard, who used to curl up beside her with storybooks, but now, he was a man lost in his own excuses, leaning on her like a child. Robert, she said softly, why didn't you tell me you lost your job? His eyes widened. Who told you that? Does it matter? Shirley asked. 2 weeks ago, wasn't it? Robert slumped in his chair, shame washing over his face. Valerie crossed her arms, her jaw tight. You lied to me, Shirley continued, her voice trembling. You let me believe you were providing, when I was the one keeping this family afloat. I sold your father's ring. Robert, did you know that your father's wedding ring, gone, so you wouldn't have to admit you were struggling? Robert's face twisted with shock. Mom, you didn't. Shirley nodded, her throat burning. I did. And do you know what hurts the most? Not the money, not the sacrifices. It's that you let me carry it all in silence, while your wife insulted me at my own table. Valerie's eyes flickered, guilt hidden beneath layers of pride. For once, she had no words. The room was heavy with silence. Finally, Robert spoke, his voice small. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't want you to worry. Shirley laughed bitterly. Protecting me? Robert, you've been hiding behind me. I've been your shield so long, you don't even know how to stand on your own. He lowered his head, his shoulders sagging. Shirley's anger gave way to sorrow. She wanted to hold him, to comfort him like she had when he was little, but she knew comfort now would only feed the cycle. You need to take responsibility, she said firmly. I won't pay another bill for you. Not rent, not insurance, nothing. If you and Valerie want a life together, then you both have to build it yourselves. Valerie shifted uneasily, her lips pressed thin. Robert looked as if she had struck him, but Shirley held her ground. This isn't because I don't love you, she added. It's because I do, and because I'm finally learning to love myself, too. That night, after they left, Shirley sat alone in her kitchen. The quiet almost deafening. She stared at her reflection in the darkened window and whispered, it's time. Time to stop living in the shadows of sacrifice. Time to reclaim her voice, her dreams, her dignity. And as if the universe had been waiting for her to reach this moment, the phone rang. On the other end was a voice she hadn't heard in years, warm, familiar, carrying memories of laughter and possibilities. Shirley, Michael Jenkins said, it's been a long time. Her heart fluttered. Seattle, the ocean, a life she had once turned away from, but maybe now, finally, it was calling her back. The sound of Michael's voice lingered in Shirley's ear long after she hung up the phone. She sat at her kitchen table, fingertips pressed against her lips, as though to hold the warmth of the memory inside her. Michael Jenkins, the man who had once made her laugh so hard she cried. The man who had invited her to Seattle years ago, back when life still seemed to promise second chances. She had turned him down then, telling herself Robert needed her too much. Now, the possibility had returned, unexpected and shimmering with the allure of freedom. The following morning, Shirley stood in front of her wardrobe, staring at clothes that seemed suddenly too small for the life ahead of her. Blouses worn thin from years of work, skirts that no longer fit her curves comfortably, sweaters stretched from constant washing. She thought about Valerie's sneer, the way her daughter-in-law always dressed like she was attending a gala. Shirley's own reflection, in the streaked mirror, revealed a woman softer than she once was, rounder in the belly and hips, her arms fuller, her cheeks plump. She had learned to hide behind practicality, but in that moment, she saw beauty too, strength carved into her softness, resilience in every line etched on her face. She whispered, if I go, I'll go as me, not what anyone else thinks I should be. That afternoon, she called Michael back. Michael, she began, her voice trembling. Shirley, I was hoping you'd call. How are you? Surviving, she admitted, but maybe it's time to do more than survive. He chuckled softly. That's the Shirley I remember. Listen, I wasn't kidding the other night. I'd love for you to come to Seattle. I've got a guest room, and the view of the water will take your breath away. You've given so much to everyone else. Don't you think it's time to give something back to yourself? Her heart raced. She imagined the salty breeze, the blue horizon stretching endlessly. Then she imagined Robert's face if she told him. He would beg, guilt, maybe even lash out, and Valerie could already hear her snide comment, running away won't make you younger. But Michael's invitation felt like more than a trip. It felt like a doorway, I'll think about it, she said softly. Days passed. Shirley busied herself with chores, but Michael's voice haunted her thoughts. Each time she saw Robert's name flash on her phone, asking for help or offering half-truths, the scale tipped further. She had lived her life for others. Maybe it was time to live for Shirley. Then came Sunday dinner. Robert and Valerie arrived, bringing tension with them like storm clouds. Shirley prepared roast chicken and collard greens, but her stomach churned as they sat down. So, Valerie said, slicing her meat delicately, have you considered redecorating? This place could use a modern touch. Shirley's hand tightened around her fork. She heard Marlene's voice in her head. Don't let nobody dim your light. I like it the way it is, Shirley said firmly. It's my home. Valerie blinked, surprised at the resistance. Robert cleared his throat. Mom, about the insurance bill. No, Shirley interrupted. Robert's mouth fell open. What? I said no. I can't do it anymore. I won't. If you and Valerie need something, you'll figure it out together. You're adults. I've carried you long enough. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Valerie's eyes narrowed. Robert's face flushed. Mom, don't do this, he pleaded. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Shirley said, her voice steady, though her heart pounded. I've sacrificed everything for you. My health, my savings, even your father's ring. And what have I gotten in return? Lies. Disrespect. Silence when I needed you to defend me. No more. Robert's jaw tightened, but there was no fight left in him. For once, he had no argument. Valerie scoffed and pushed her chair back. This is ridiculous. Shirley rose slowly, her body heavy but her spirit lighter than it had been in years. What's ridiculous, she said, is that I let it go on this long. That night, Shirley sat alone again, the dinner plates still on the table, but her decision was clear. She picked up the phone and dialed. Michael, she said when he answered, is that invitation still open? His voice warmed. For you, always. Shirley took a deep breath, her chest swelling with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Then, I'm coming. The week that followed was a blur of preparations. She told Marlene first, who clapped her hands and declared, about time you start living, girl. She told her church group, who promised to pray for her journey, but when it came to Robert, she hesitated. He showed up on Wednesday, his eyes ringed with exhaustion. Mom, he said quietly, I've been thinking, maybe you're right. Maybe I need to figure things out on my own. Shirley searched his face, trying to gauge sincerity. I hope so, baby, because I won't be here to catch you this time. His brow furrowed. What do you mean? I'm going to Seattle. For a while, shock froze him. Seattle. With who? Michael Jenkins, an old friend. Robert's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You can't just leave. What about me? Shirley placed a hand on his cheek, her touch gentle but resolute. You'll manage. You have too. I've given you all of me for years. Now I'm keeping a little for myself. His eyes filled with tears, but Shirley stood firm. On the morning of her departure, Shirley packed a modest suitcase, a few dresses, her Bible, the photo of Robert as a boy with dandelions in his hand. She looked around her little home one last time. For years it had been her cage, but now it felt like a launching pad. Marlene drove her to the airport. As Shirley boarded the plane, her heart hammered in her chest. She had never flown before. Her body felt clumsy squeezing into the narrow seat, but when the engines roared and the plane lifted off, she felt something she hadn't in decades. Weightless, she looked out the window as the ground fell away, and tears blurred her vision. Not tears of sorrow, but of release. That Seattle waited ahead, and with it, a chance, not just to escape but to begin again. The plane touched down in Seattle beneath a quilt of gray clouds, the kind that seemed stitched together with threads of rain. Shirley pressed her hand against the small oval window, staring at a city she had only ever imagined. Her chest fluttered not with fear now, but with the anticipation of a woman stepping into the unknown. Michael was waiting at the arrival's gate. Time had added lines to his face, but his smile was the same, easy, genuine, carrying a warmth that spread through her like sunlight. Shirley Williams, he said, arms opening wide. Look at you. She laughed, a little self-conscious, and hugged him. His embrace was steady, grounding. You didn't have to come all the way to meet me, she said. Of course I did, he replied. You're not just anyone. The words lingered. For years, Shirley had been just Robert's mother, just a helper, just a woman getting by. Now, someone was reminding her she was more. Michael's home sat on a quiet hill overlooking Puget Sound. When Shirley stepped inside, she was greeted not by luxury, but by warmth. Bookshelves crammed with novels, photos of friends and family, the faint scent of cedar. And when Michael pulled back the curtains, the view stole her breath. Water stretched endlessly, its surface shifting like liquid silver beneath the cloudy sky. In the distance, ferries glided gracefully, carrying strangers to destinations unknown. "It's beautiful," Shirley whispered. "Wait until you see it at sunset," Michael said. "You'll swear the sky is on fire." Over the next few days, Shirley rediscovered pieces of herself she thought had been buried. Michael took her to Pike Place Market, where fishmongers tossed salmon through the air like jugglers. She sampled fresh cherries, their sweetness exploding on her tongue, and bought a scarf, woven in shades of blue and green that matched the sea. One afternoon, they visited Auntie Beach. Shirley kicked off her shoes and let the cold waves lap at her ankles. She closed her eyes, breathing in the briny air. For the first time in years, she felt small in the best way, part of something vast and alive. Michael watched her with quiet admiration. "I've never seen you so light," he said. She smiled, her cheeks warming. "I've never let myself be." Yet even as Seattle embraced her, shadows lingered. At night, alone in the guest room, Shirley's thoughts drifted back to Robert. She pictured him sitting at her kitchen table, his face pale with worry. Was he eating? Was Valerie berating him? Was he blaming her for leaving? The guilt pressed heavy, but she forced herself to remember Mr. Alvarez's words. Maybe he needs to feel like a failure, otherwise he'll never stand on his own. She whispered a prayer. "Lord, watch over my boy, teach him what I couldn't." One evening, after dinner, Michael poured them both glasses of red wine. They sat on the porch, the air cool and damp, the lights of the city shimmering in the distance. "Tell me something, Shirley," Michael said. "When was the last time you did something just for you?" She laughed softly. "I don't even remember. Maybe before Robert was born, maybe never." "Then let this be the first," he said, raising his glass. They clinked glasses. Shirley felt the wine warm her chest, loosening knots she hadn't realized she carried. "Michael," she said carefully, "do you ever think it's too late to start over?" He shook his head. "Not for a second. Life doesn't hand out expiration dates for dreams. We give them to ourselves." "But you," he leaned closer. "You're just getting started." Her breath caught. For the first time in decades, she allowed herself to imagine more. Laughter without restraint. Mornings not dictated by others' needs. A future where she was more than a caretaker. The next day, Shirley received a phone call that tested her resolve. "Mom," Robert's voice cracked through the line. "Valerie left." Shirley froze. "What do you mean, left?" She packed up and went to her mother's. Said she was tired of struggling. I don't know what to do." Shirley's instinct screamed to jump in, to fix everything, but she forced herself to stay silent for a long breath. "Robert," she said slowly, "I'm sorry. That must hurt. It does, and I know I've let you down. I've been selfish. But I need you. Please, come home." Tears blurred her vision. She looked out at the water, steady and unyielding. "I can't come home right now," she said firmly. "This time, you'll have to stand on your own. I believe you can." His silence on the other end was heavy with disbelief. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I do," she said gently. "More than you know. But if I go back now, nothing changes, and we both deserve change." When the call ended, Shirley wept into her hands. Michael sat beside her quietly, his hand resting over hers until the storm passed. That night, Shirley dreamt of her younger self, the girl who once wanted to be a teacher, who loved to write poems, who believed the world was vast and waiting. That girl smiled at her, holding out her hand. When Shirley woke, she understood. Seattle wasn't just a trip, it was a rebirth. She rose from bed, stood before the mirror, and whispered the words again, "You are enough." And this time, she believed them. The day of the confrontation arrived like a thunderstorm on the horizon, inevitable looming, and charged with an electricity that made every breath feel heavier than the last. Monica had spent nights rehearsing what she would say, writing and rewriting words on scraps of paper that she later tore to shreds. No version seemed strong enough. Yet silence was no longer an option. She had chosen the setting carefully. The living room of her own home. It was neutral ground in theory, but the walls still carried the ghosts of slammed doors, hushed arguments, and the laughter of happier days. Monica wanted to reclaim that space, to force the truth into the open air where it could no longer hide in whispers or evasive glances. The evening began with tension so thick it felt like walking through smoke. Tanya arrived first, her heels tapping nervously against the hardwood floor. She offered Monica a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, her lips pressed together in a thin line of forced civility. "I'm here," Tanya said softly, her tone more question than statement. "Thank you," Monica replied, keeping her voice steady. "We'll wait for Marcus." When Marcus finally entered, his presence filled the room like a storm cloud. He looked restless, his shirt slightly wrinkled, his jaw tight. He avoided eye contact with both women, as though staring at the carpet might somehow shield him from accountability. Monica gestured toward the couch. "Sit, we're going to talk tonight, all of us." Marcus hesitated but obeyed, lowering himself onto the cushions with the posture of a man preparing for battle. Tanya sat at the opposite end, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Monica chose the armchair across from them, her body upright, her chin lifted. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Monica clasped her hands together to stop their trembling. "I'm done living with half-truths," she said finally. Her voice was calm but edged with steel. "We are going to lay everything out tonight. No more lies, no more excuses. Marcus, Tanya, need both of you to tell me what has really been going on." Marcus shifted his eyes, flickering toward Tanya, and then away again. "Monica, I don't think this is necessary." "Yes, it is," she cut him off sharply. "You don't get to decide what's necessary anymore. You've already taken that choice from me once." Tanya inhaled sharply, glancing at Marcus as though seeking permission to speak. "Monica," she began cautiously, "it's not what you think." Monica leaned forward, her gaze unyielding. "Then tell me what it is." The words spilled out slowly, haltingly, like stones being dragged from the bottom of a river. Tanya admitted to her loneliness, how she had been drawn into Marcus's orbit during late-night conversations about work and life. She painted it as accidental, a mistake born of weakness, not malice. "I didn't mean for it to happen," Tanya said, her voice breaking. "I cared about you, Monica. I still do. But Marcus, he made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years." Monica absorbed the confession with clenched teeth. Her chest burned with anger, but she forced herself to keep listening. "And you, Marcus?" she demanded. Marcus's shoulders slumped. His voice was low, almost inaudible. "I messed up. I let something start that never should have. But I swear to you, Monica, it wasn't about replacing you. I was lost, and I let myself be stupid." Monica's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Stupid? That's your excuse. You betrayed me, Marcus. You betrayed us. And you," she turned to Tanya, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You were supposed to be my friend." The room erupted into a storm of overlapping voices. Tanya pleaded for forgiveness, insisting that she had ended things before they went too far. Marcus swore it meant nothing, that he wanted to rebuild his marriage. Monica sat through it all, her chest heaving, her emotions pulling her in opposite directions. Finally, she raised her hand, demanding silence. "Enough." The room quieted instantly. "I hear you both," she said, her tone firm, though her throat ached with every word. "But hearing you doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't erase the fact that you both looked me in the eyes and lied, day after day. I may forgive one day, but I will never forget." Her declaration hung in the air like a blade. Tanya bowed her head, tears streaming freely now. "I'll leave. You don't ever have to see me again if that's what you want." Marcus reached for Monica's hand, but she pulled away, her expression unreadable. "I don't know yet what I want," she admitted. "What I do know is this. I'm not going to let either of you define my worth. I get to decide who I am from here on out." And with that, Monica stood, her body trembling but her spirit unshaken. She left the room, leaving Marcus and Tanya in silence, their shame pressing down on them like a weight they could never escape. For the first time in years, Monica felt something fierce and unfamiliar rise within her freedom. Monica didn't sleep that night. The echoes of Marcus and Tanya's words clung to her like smoke, impossible to wash away. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every betrayal, every whispered lie. Every moment she had ignored her instincts just to keep her world from collapsing. By dawn, her decision was clear. She could no longer carry the burden of silence. If Marcus and Tanya had exposed her to lies in the dark, she would drag everything into the light. The morning sunlight painted the kitchen golden, but Monica felt none of its warmth. She brewed a pot of coffee, her hands steady now, her resolve hardened. Marcus walked in quietly, as if afraid of disturbing something fragile. "Monica," he began cautiously. "About last night," she cut him off. her tone cold but measured. There's nothing left to explain, Marcus. I heard the truth from both of you. What I need now isn't more excuses, it's action. He shifted uneasily. Action? Yes, I want you out. The words dropped like stones in water, creating ripples that seemed to reach every corner of the room. Marcus froze, his face a mask of disbelief. You don't mean that? He whispered. I do. Her voice cracked, but didn't falter. For years, I bent myself into pieces to keep this marriage alive. I ignored the distance, the coldness, the lies, but I won't ignore this. You broke something that can't be fixed. Marcus's jaw clenched. So that's it. You're throwing away everything we built. Monica slammed her mug onto the counter, the ceramic clinking loudly. I didn't throw it away, you did. You and Tanya together. Don't you dare put that on me. For the first time, her anger burned brighter than her grief. She felt taller, stronger, unshackled from the fear that had kept her tethered to a broken marriage. Marcus's face softened, desperation bleeding through his anger. Please, Monica, don't do this. We can work it out. But Monica shook her head slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. No, I deserve better. I deserve honesty, love, and respect. Things you chose not to give me. By evening, Marcus's belongings were packed into boxes. He left with downcast eyes, muttering promises that Monica no longer cared to hear. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving the house eerily quiet. The silence was heavy, but for once, it didn't crush her. It was space to breathe, to think, to begin again. Tanya, meanwhile, had flooded Monica's phone with messages, apologies, pleas, explanations. Monica read none of them. She had nothing left to say. Some wounds were too deep for words. That night, she sat in the living room surrounded by the remnants of her marriage. Photographs of vacations where smiles masked growing cracks. Gifts that once symbolized love but now felt like empty tokens. One by one, she removed them from the shelves, placing them in a box marked past. Monica then did something she hadn't done in years. She wrote in her journal. Her pen moved swiftly, releasing the storm she had carried for too long. She wrote of betrayal and heartbreak, but also of strength, survival, and the fire awakening in her chest. When she finished, she closed the journal and whispered to herself, "This is not the end of me. This is the beginning." The following days were raw, painful, and strangely liberating. Every time she walked past the empty space where Marcus's shoes once sat, every time she ignored Tanya's calls, Monica felt a piece of herself returning, pieces she had lost in the shadows of compromise and silence. It was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time in years, Monica was no longer just surviving. She was choosing herself. The first morning Monica woke up truly alone. The silence of the house wrapped around her like a new kind of blanket, not soft, not familiar, but undeniably hers. No footsteps shuffling in the hallway, no clatter of Marcus's keys, no tension lurking behind closed doors, just quiet. She stood in front of the mirror, really looking at herself. The woman staring back wasn't just tired or heartbroken. She was stronger, sharper, with eyes that carried both pain and promise. For years she had bent herself to fit into someone else's vision of a wife, a friend, a safe place. Now, she was free to redefine everything. Reclaiming space, the first thing she did was reclaim her home. She painted the living room walls a warm, bold colored terracotta, read something Marcus always thought was too loud, as the paintbrush swept across the wall. Monica felt each stroke erasing the years of compromise. She rearranged the furniture, donated the couch that had held too many arguments, and replaced it with a chair she'd always wanted but never bought. Every corner she transformed became a declaration. This is mine. Reconnecting. In the weeks that followed, Monica reached out to people she hadn't spoken to in years. Old college friends, a cousin she had lost touch with, even her book club, which she had abandoned when Marcus complained she was always too busy. One night, sitting in a cafe with laughter bubbling around her, she realized she hadn't thought of Marcus or Tanya in hours. For once, the absence didn't ache. It left room for joy. Facing Tanya. Eventually, Tanya showed up at Monica's door, uninvited but trembling, her eyes swollen from tears. Monica opened the door, but didn't step aside. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," Tanya whispered, "not to ask for forgiveness, but I needed you to know I regret everything." Monica studied her former friend for a long moment. The ache in her chest was dull now, no longer sharp. "I believe you," she said simply, "but belief isn't the same as trust. And trust, that's gone." Tanya nodded. tears streaming down her cheeks, and walked away. Monica closed the door softly, not with anger, but with finality. A new path. Months passed, and Monica discovered a rhythm to her new life. She started volunteering at a local women's center, sharing her story with others who carried their own scars. She found power in helping women rebuild, reminding them of their worth. In doing so, she reminded herself of hers. She also rediscovered passions she had buried: painting, journaling, even dancing in her living room, with music blasting loud enough to shake the windows. She laughed until her belly hurt, not caring that she wasn't the woman Marcus once wanted. She was Monica, bold, beautiful, imperfect, whole. The transformation. One evening, Monica stood on her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of fire and gold. The same sky she had once stared at in despair now felt like a promise. Her phone buzzed with a message from her daughter, checking in, telling her how proud she was. Monica smiled, her heart swelling with a warmth that had nothing to do with Marcus, nothing to do with Tanya, and everything to do with herself. She whispered into the twilight, "I survived, I'm free, and I'm not going back." The story of betrayal and heartbreak had become a story of rebirth. Monica wasn't defined by what she had lost, but by what she had found: her voice, her strength, and a future that was hers to shape. For the first time in years, she didn't feel broken. She felt alive,